Chapter 1, Betrayal and Rebirth. Agony tore at every nerve in my body, but far more unbearable was the hunger gnawing at my innards, and the soul-searing pain of betrayal that cut to the bone. Emma, sister, could you just endure a little longer and eat less? Our supplies dwindle with every bite. I'm pregnant now, I can't let the baby go hungry. The woman standing before me, Riley, looked frail and delicate. Her pale fingers caressed her swollen belly, yet her words filled me with revulsion. Riley, the woman who, merely 6 months into my marriage, was already 8 months pregnant, nestled in the arms of Justin, my so-called husband. I hadn't had a drop of water, or a crumb of food in 2 days. My throat was parched, and I could only stare at them with what little strength I had left, flames of rage in my eyes threatening to incinerate them. Justin and I had been married for just 6 months. 6 months ago, I'd thought I'd found true love, a partner to spend my life with. What a ridiculous delusion. This marriage had been an elaborate scam from the start. The child in Riley's belly was the starkest proof. True love. Vows? All meaningless lies. All they'd ever wanted was the unexpected fortune in my hands, the massive lottery jackpot I'd won. When the zombie apocalypse erupted, Justin, his seemingly kind parents, and I were trapped in the house I'd bought on the outskirts of Little Rock with my savings and part of the lottery money. In the early days of the crisis, when order hadn't fully collapsed, a young man in a pickup truck, carrying the pregnant Riley, forced his way into our gated upscale community. Back then, Justin had pretended to be so noble, spouting nonsense like God teaches us to be merciful. He'd ignored my vague unease and insisted on letting them in. I'd thought he was kind-hearted. But no, it was all part of the plan. That young man was Riley's brother, and they were in this together. Justin had long plotted to protect his true love, and her unborn child when the end of the world came. Within days, as the situation outside deteriorated, zombies roaming, communications cut off, they decided they had full control over me and finally tore off their masks. Not only did they confess their betrayal, but they also forced me to wait on them hand and foot like a maid. Cooking, cleaning, even crouching in the corner like a dog while they ate. When I refused, I was beaten and kicked. Riley was even more vicious, egging them on to cut off my food, hoping to break my will completely. They lived in my house, ate my supplies, and still trampled on my dignity. Even with my last ounce of strength, I refused to submit to these scumbags. I knew that if I gave in now and became their slave, once the food ran out, I'd probably become their reserve rations. Humph, what are you staring at? You can't even have kids, taking care of Riley is the least you can do. Justin, control your wife. In this world, how would she survive without us? My mother-in-law Marion still had that sharp-tongued, mean-spirited manner. My father-in-law, Bob, sat silently on the side, but his eyes looked at me with the same disgust, as if I were something repulsive. I lowered my head and sneered silently. Scumbags, all of them. I endured the kicks from Riley's brother, collapsing to the floor like a soulless shell. The family ignored me, gathering around Riley's belly and putting on a show of a warm family. I waited for night to fall, waited for these scumbags to fall into a deep sleep. Time dragged by, every second an agony. Finally, only the sound of snoring filled the living room. The tearing pain all over my body, using my teeth to slowly gnaw and tear at the rough rope around my wrists, which was already soaked in blood. My mouth was filled with the taste of iron, but I felt no pain, only overwhelming hatred sustained me. The rope finally loosened. I flexed my stiff, numb wrists and crept toward the door like a ghost. They'd thought I was cowardly and weak, that I'd never dare risk my life. But they were gravely mistaken. I threw the door open with a violent jerk. Outside, those wandering, hideous walkers were instantly drawn to the scent of living humans inside. They let out greedy snarls and swarmed in like a relentless tide. In the extreme pain of being torn apart by zombies, I heard the shrill screams and desperate curses of those scumbags from the bedroom. The agony soon consumed my consciousness, but in my final moment, I felt nothing but immense satisfaction. Mutual destruction. It was worth it. When consciousness returned, I jolted upright in bed, my pajamas soaked with cold sweat. The surroundings were familiar yet strange. It was my rented apartment in Little Rock. Sunlight filtered through the slats of the blinds, and the air smelled of faint lemon cleaner, not blood or rot. I froze, my heart pounding, unable to tell if this was reality or a post-death illusion. My gaze wandered aimlessly around the room, finally fixing on the electronic alarm clock by the bed. 20XX, August 15, 8:32 a.m. The date, this was 1 year before the zombie virus outbreak. I picked up my phone tremblingly, only to find it was turned off. A chill instantly crawled up my spine. I pressed the power button, and as the screen lit up, a flood of text messages and missed call notifications poured in, nearly crashing the phone. I remembered. This was right after I'd claimed that damned Powerball jackpot. After taxes, I'd walked away with millions of dollars. Overnight, I'd become wealthy, and someone, jealous of my luck, had leaked my personal information. Some even pretended to be me online, claiming I came from a wealthy family, was kind-hearted, and planned to donate all the money to charity. As a result, as soon as I got the prize money, distant relatives, former classmates, and old friends I hadn't spoken to in years swarmed in like sharks smelling blood. My phone and inbox were bombarded, everyone wanted to catch up, but in reality, they all wanted to leech off me. It was also during this time that Justin, my perfect boyfriend, who'd been lukewarm toward me for years, suddenly changed. He'd started doting on me, showering me with attention, putting on an act of being deeply devoted regardless of wealth or poverty. He'd fooled me into thinking I'd found true love, and I'd finally fallen into the marriage trap he'd carefully woven. But this time, I clenched my phone tightly, my nails digging into my palm. I would never be fooled again. I was going home, to my home at the foot of the Ozark Mountains in northwestern Arkansas, to be with my family, and to survive the doomsday safely. I'd stay far away from Justin and Riley, those scumbags. Revenge? If the chance came, I'd show no mercy. Even if it didn't, they lived in a rundown first-floor apartment in Little Rock. They'd probably can't even survive the first wave of the apocalypse. Gurgle. Though my body wasn't hungry, the memory of starving to death in the doomsday was too painful. A wave of psychological hunger overwhelmed me. I rushed into the kitchen, rummaged through all the instant noodles I had, and cooked a huge pot, spicy oil, red sauce, steaming hot. I devoured it greedily, eating until my stomach ached, until I nearly vomited. I never wanted to experience that terrible feeling of being so hungry that my body felt weak, and my mind could only think of food ever again. In this life, I would never repeat the same mistakes. Once I calmed down, I immediately took action. I packed my bags and bought the earliest flight from Little Rock to Fayetteville online. I'd already quit my job because of the earlier harassment, so I had no ties left here. When I went downstairs, I saw Justin walking toward the apartment building in the distance. A wave of nausea surged in my chest, and I quickly ducked into a nearby convenience store. He stopped not far away, talking on the phone, and his voice drifted over clearly. "Baby Riley, you know she won the lottery. As long as we keep her fooled, the money will be ours. You agreed to this plan too. Don't worry, I only love you. Dating her before was just because her family had a small factory, and was well off. If she doesn't take the bait, it's fine, didn't you leak the lottery news? Ruin her reputation and see what she can do." I listened, gritting my teeth, my body cold. So it had been a conspiracy between him and Riley from the very start. What surprised me even more was that after hanging up on Riley, he immediately answered another call, his tone turning extremely impatient. "Megan. We're done. I should have broken up with you the day we graduated college. Stop pestering me." He only said that one sentence before hanging up roughly. Megan? She was another classmate of ours in college, beautiful but impulsive and extreme, and had gotten into trouble more than once. I never would have guessed Justin was two-timing 3 people. Disgusting. Watching him walk toward my apartment building, I didn't want to stay a second longer. I immediately hailed a taxi and rushed to the airport, fleeing this place. Chapter 2, Returning Home and Warning. After the plane landed in Fayetteville, I took a long-distance bus and finally returned home near Harrison, at the foot of the Ozark Mountains. My family ran a small fruit and vegetable canning factory here. It wasn't large, but it had a good reputation locally, and our life was comfortable and well off. In college, I'd once been obsessed with partying and spent money recklessly. My family had cut off my financial support, and I'd finally come to my senses. Now that I thought about it, Justin had started pursuing me in college, probably because he'd noticed the affluent background I'd shown back then. After all, over the years we'd dated, the financial support I'd given him in various names had added up to a considerable amount. It was afternoon, and my parents were both at home. Seeing me suddenly return, they were both surprised and happy. "Emma. Honey, why are you back so suddenly? You should have told us in advance." My mom, Sarah, stepped forward to hug me. "Dad, Mom." Looking at my parents' concerned faces, my eyes welled up with tears. When I'd been waiting to die in despair during the doomsday, they'd been the ones I'd missed the most. Fortunately, it wasn't too late for everything. I had to tell my family about the doomsday. Over the next year, we had to work together to build a safe shelter. "Dad, Mom, there's something really important I need to tell you." After dinner, I took a deep breath, pulled my parents to sit in the living room, and spoke with an extremely serious expression. Then, I told them the whole truth, about my rebirth and the zombie virus that would sweep the world in a year. As expected, my parents couldn't believe it at all. Their faces were filled with shock and worry, as if they thought I'd been under too much stress and lost my mind. "Sweetheart, are you too tired? Did you have a bad dream?" Mom reached out, wanting to feel my forehead. But for some reason, after being reborn, my memory had become surprisingly good. On my way home, I'd already made a list from memory, not of doomsday supplies, but of a series of major news events that would happen around the world over the next year. I took out my phone, pulled up the list, and handed it to my parents. "Dad, Mom, I know this is hard to believe. But please look at this list, it has things that will happen in the future. In the next few days, the most striking one will be the sudden collapse of that newly built bridge in a European country, which was claimed to be the most solid." My parents were skeptical, but seeing me speak logically, with no signs of abnormality other than the shocking content of my words, they didn't dismiss it outright. Fortunately, this list became the key. A few days later, when my parents saw the shocking news of the bridge collapse on the TV news, and compared it to the time, an event on my list, their expressions changed from doubt to extreme shock. "Oh my God, this actually happened." My dad, John, spoke with a tremor in his voice. Shortly after, another event on my list, a strong earthquake and subsequent tsunami in a Pacific island country, also made headline news as scheduled. With hard facts in front of them, my parents, devout Christians, were filled with awe as well as shock at this supernatural prophecy. That same day, they contacted my sister, Hannah, who worked in Texas, and told her to come home immediately. Luckily, I'd already talked to my sister in advance. As soon as these news events happened, she realized the seriousness of the situation. By the time my parents called, she'd already packed her bags, and was on her way to the airport. It was rare for the four of us to be together, not during a holiday or festival. My dad, John, made a decisive decision, no matter how unbelievable this sounds, since Emma has proven her prophetic ability, we have to believe it. We must start preparing immediately, find a safe shelter and stock up on supplies. Mom, Sarah, took out all the family savings and account books. I also took out my savings, including the after-tax lottery prize money. My sister, Hannah, unhesitatingly contributed all her savings. I glanced at my parents' savings, and my long-held perception of our ordinary working-class family was completely shattered. Though I didn't look closely, it was definitely in the seven figures. So our family's canning factory had been this successful. Chapter 3, Family Meeting and Shelter Planning. At the family meeting, my sister Hannah had a bold idea. We should find a remote island in the Gulf of Mexico. Being isolated from the world is the safest. But I opposed it. We're inland. The trip to the coast is long and risky, and we'd stand out too much. Hurricanes and rising sea levels are also problems. Building a base in an unfamiliar place would be too difficult. My parents also disagreed after thinking about it. Mom was soft-hearted. Our church friends and the old employees at the factory are all here. If possible, we should help them as much as we can. My heart tightened, afraid that Mom would be too kind during the doomsday. I quickly told them in detail, with tears in my eyes, about my tragic experience in my previous life, especially how I'd been deceived and abused to death by Justin's family. My sister also urged, Mom, Emma's right. People's hearts are unpredictable during the doomsday. After I got the news, I didn't even dare tell my best colleague, afraid the news would leak and bring trouble. My dad, John, frowned and said in a deep voice, Don't worry, we're not fools. We still remember being cheated by so-called friends when we first started the business. Your mom is kind, but she knows her limits. She won't do anything stupid that endangers the family. Mom sighed and explained, What I mean is, once we have enough supplies for ourselves, if we still have extra, we can find an appropriate time and excuse to help our relatives and friends who really need it, and the loyal old workers at the factory. We just want to have a clear conscience. My sister and I exchanged glances, feeling a little more at ease. This was a reasonable limit. After repeated discussions, we agreed that building an underground or semi-underground shelter based on the terrain and existing buildings would be the safest option. We had two plans. One was to return to our old house in the mountains, which had a cellar and a warehouse. The other was to buy or renovate a property with underground space near the factory. After careful consideration, we decided not to give up the factory. It was relatively remote, close to a water source, a small stream, and had existing walls and buildings that could be used for cover. Dad decided to focus on renovating the factory. We divided the work clearly. Dad, John, would continue running the factory as usual to cover our tracks, while using his connections to find reliable construction contractors and supply channels. My sister Hannah, Mom Sarah, and I would be responsible for planning and purchasing supplies. Chapter 4: The Ozark Fortress. Under the pretense of expanding production and upgrading storage facilities, Dad, John, began renovating the factory. He hired a trusted local construction team, first reinforcing the outer walls of the factory, then focusing on renovating a large warehouse built against the mountain at the back of the factory compound. The warehouse itself was partially embedded in the mountain. On this basis, we secretly expanded it to build a solid underground bunker. The bunker had 2 levels, made of reinforced concrete, and was equipped with an independent ventilation and filtration system, disguised as the factory's environmental protection equipment, a rainwater collection and purification system, and a hidden sewage discharge channel. For energy, we installed inconspicuous solar panels on the factory roof, and secretly set up a small hydropower generator upstream of the nearby stream. We also stockpiled large amounts of diesel and gasoline for backup generators. The power system was isolated to ensure the concealment and continuity of the bunker's energy supply. In addition to rainwater collection, we also secretly built a water intake pipeline leading to the stream, with multiple filtration and disinfection devices. The factory's original well was also reinforced and maintained. The entrance to the bunker was cleverly hidden under a large hydraulic lifting platform, which was usually used for moving goods. When necessary, it could be lowered to reveal a solid door leading